Do you recall Mike Holmes? Here he is now. He won't look familiar to you. In 2015, Mike Holmes appeared on 25 Ontario Homes. He referred to them as approved homes. Because they trusted him, buyers paid higher prices. Excavators showed up 9 years later. Nothing needed to be fixed by them. Their purpose was to demolish the homes. Everything was lost for the families that trusted him. The greatest error of all had been committed by the guy who had made his fortune by correcting the mistakes of others. You won't be able to speak when you hear the truth about what actually occurred. Mike Holmes was born in Halton Hills on August 3, 1963. He was unaware that his family was impoverished. Kraft dinner and hot dogs were served every night for less than $2, which was enough to feed everyone. His parents, Jim and Shirley, made sure their children never felt the burden of their hardships. In order to get deals, they would shop late at night. Shirley could make 7 meals off of 1 chicken. The children thought they were middle class despite their tattered shoes and second-hand clothing. With love and effort, their parents concealed the reality. Mike was forever changed by that silent power. He was raised with the conviction that no one should have to endure suffering in silence, particularly not as a result of subpar building or dishonest labor. Mike began to accompany his father around construction sites when he was just 3 years old. Jim took on extra construction work on the weekends while he was employed at General Motors. Mike wasn't only following, he was picking everything up quickly. By the age of 4, he was familiar with electrical wiring and could recognize pipes by touch. People began to take notice. Mike discovered a significant plumbing error on one work that may have resulted in significant harm. His dad received a bonus of $500. This meant there would be food for 2 weeks. Mike wasn't having fun. He was resolving actual issues. These were not classroom lessons, they were life lessons. Mike rewired their whole house at 6. The ancient wiring in the house was unsafe. Since it was too costly to hire an electrician, Jim showed Mike how to do it himself. The boy ran new wires over 6 weekends. Outlets were changed, and everything was secured. He even knew how to ground circuits and utilized a multimeter. The city inspector didn't think a kid had done the work when he arrived. However, he was shocked after verifying every connection. It was among the best electrical jobs he had seen that year, he added. At 6 years old, that was mastery, not simply skill. Jim taught in a unique style. He would constantly wonder, "Why am I doing this, Mike?" Whether he was drilling, sawing, or selecting materials, he forced Mike to consider his options. They would pause and have a conversation if Mike was unsure of the solution. It has nothing to do with copying. It has to do with comprehension. Mike even asked his father once regarding the use of a certain kind of wood. As it happened, Mike was correct. He made wiser choices as a result of his interest. By the age of 7, he was able to enter any website and identify issues that adults overlooked. His mother was as audacious. Nobody discussed topics like sex education in the 1960s, particularly not in Catholic households. Shirley, however, did. She talked to her children politely and honestly. She taught them to challenge preconceived notions and pose questions. Even the smallest children were able to share their opinions during the family sessions. She was perceived by several neighbors as being too laid back. However, her true self was ahead of her time. Mike's straightforward, honest communication style got ingrained in his personality. He then adopted the same strategy while addressing Holmes on television: respectful, concise, and unambiguous. In contrast, Mike had a bad time at school. He had conflicts with educators who disliked criticism. He wasn't silent about the fact that he knew more about construction than they did. He was referred to as disruptive. Careless, he said. In grade 11, he eventually dropped out of school, not because he couldn't manage it, but rather because he couldn't stand poor instruction. He was correct. He had later established himself as one of the most respected voices in the construction industry, demonstrating that his criticism of the system had been correct. He launched his first business at the age of 19. Not a job for one man. He employed 13 people. As a teenager, that meant handling clients, deadlines, insurance, and payroll. Some were hesitant to trust someone so young, but Mike showed his worth. He took note of every detail and ensured that everything was completed correctly. Customers that trusted him didn't regret it. He had a child and controlled the company by the age of 21. Mike was managing projects and changing nappies while his friends were out having a good time. He needed to make enough money to buy tools, pay his team, feed his family, and still finish the task. Despite the difficulty, he succeeded. His company has always prioritized doing things well rather than merely generating money. He took longer, used better materials, and occasionally made his own repairs. In the 1990s, that almost lost him everything, but it gained him trust. North America's building industry collapsed as a result of the severe recession. Clients suddenly showed no concern for quality. Regardless of how awful the job was, they preferred the least expensive choice. Their costs were too high for the market, which was full of cheap contractors and houses. He couldn't be saved by his reputation. He had to fire his employees one by one. He sold the building where his business was located. His contracts were canceled. In front of him, his dream was disintegrating. It was oppressive pressure. He already had a tense family life. He was raising 3 children while managing a failing business after being married at the age of 19 and becoming a father at the age of 21. Things at home got worse because of the lengthy work hours and ongoing stress. His wife and he started fighting more frequently. Young and overburdened, they were suddenly drowning in debt. Holmes was going through a divorce at the age of 30. It was more than simply heartache. It meant paying child support, paying legal bills, and dividing up what little was left. His business was gone. He was now also losing his marriage. Then came the most devastating blow. Holmes received a phone call that rocked him to his core just 1 month after the split. Jim Holmes, his father, had passed away. It was a strange mishap. He had tumbled down an unguarded basement stairway. He died quickly after breaking his neck. Jim was more than just Mike's father. He was his instructor and mentor, teaching him everything he knew about construction and equipment, and carrying out the task correctly. When no one else believed in him, his father did. Now he was gone when Mike needed him the most. Nothing could have been more terrible than the timing. Mike had already reached his lowest point. He had no job, no money, and now no vehicle. In order to pay his bills, he had to sell it. Losing an automobile meant that a contractor could no longer work. Once a prosperous businessman, he was now barely able to provide for his children. Then came bankruptcy. He felt alone, defeated, and ashamed. I was struggling to make ends meet at a time when most individuals are constructing their futures. It all came at him at once. His father's passing, the divorce, the business failure, the financial disaster, and the embarrassment of filing for bankruptcy. He had the impression that life was pursuing him from all sides. He was no longer a provider. He didn't know how he would reconstruct anything after losing the man who had influenced his values. Nevertheless, he persisted. The following chapter was unknown to him, but he was certain of one thing. He needed to keep going. Mike Holmes worked as a stagehand on a small HGTV show in 2001, quietly constructing sets while harboring a much larger fantasy. Wished to protect Holmes against dishonest contractors and educate them. However, he was laughed off by television networks when he presented his concept to them. They believed that the craze for house remodeling was over. Executives preferred gleaming, clean makeover demonstrations over a tough contractor who exposed fraud. They saw no potential in a man who merely wanted to make the proper corrections. As the industry slammed the door in his face, Holmes clung to his goal for more than a year. In 2003, everything was different. While on the scene, Alliance Atlantis programming director Michael Quast spotted Holmes. Holmes was not trying to sell a show. He had no intention of impressing anyone. He was just loudly complaining about how contractors were taking advantage of people. Later, Quast said that he was unable to stop talking and that veins were protruding from his neck. That emotion was strong and genuine, refused to appear on camera at all. Quast urged him to try, but he insisted he was only a contractor. And when he did, things began to move. Still, a full year passed before their show, Holmes on Holmes, was released. Now, however, the concept had at last found a supporter. The first challenge was getting the show on the air. Locating those who are willing to participate. That was more difficult. Holmes was not welcome at anyone's home. He was merely a large guy with tools. He wasn't yet a celebrity. And a loud voice. The crew therefore used their imagination. They made a flyer out of a photo they shot of their electrician with a butt crack visible. "Weary of getting a bad deal" is the slogan. Personally distributed those flyers on crowded Toronto streets, in Home Depot parking lots, and in any other location he could. Although it was embarrassing, it was effective. People began calling slowly. Holmes on Holmes didn't remain tiny for long after debuting on HGTV Canada in 2003 as simply another house remodeling program. It began to appear in more than 90 nations in a matter of years. People began to pay attention in South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, the UK, and Canada. It was neither gaudy decor or happy hosts that drew their attention. Mike Holmes was tearing down subpar improvements and repairing them correctly. Nothing was sugar-coated by him. His direct and stern approach resonated with viewers worldwide. HGTV once claimed that one of his shows received the biggest ratings they had ever seen. More than 20 episodes of some shows were broadcast each week. In 2009, his shows broke records in addition to being well-liked. Holmes was attracting over 300,000 viewers per episode, compared to the 30,000 to 50,000 people that other HGTV shows attracted. That is 10 times the typical amount. It fundamentally altered what networks believed could be accomplished by home remodeling programs.
In the same year, the Gemini Award for Best Lifestyle Series went to Holmes in New Orleans. What set Holmes on Holmes apart was the loyalty, which at its height made it the
highest-rated program on Canadian HGTV. The audience didn't watch once. Week after week, sometimes more than once, they returned. That type of audience was unprecedented for a show on repairing faulty jobs. However, Holmes gave house renovation a genuine, urgent, and intimate atmosphere. Rather than focusing on a single show, Holmes created a smart media empire. When he started Holmes Inspection in 2009, the emphasis moved to bad home inspections. It ran for 2 seasons and 52 episodes. That program exposed shortcomings in the inspection sector and provided viewers with specific guidance on what to look out for. Holmes Makes It Right followed in 2012 and ran for 2 years. He took on even more significant renovation catastrophes this time, but he wasn't done yet. With Holmes, he took things a step further in 2016. Buy It Right assists consumers in identifying issues prior to purchasing a home. With 44 reviews, that show received an IMDb rating of 9.1 to 10. A distinct stage of home ownership was the emphasis of each new series. Together, they developed a comprehensive process that included purchasing, repairing, and safely residing. It was trust, not simply the TV success, that made Holmes unique. Forbes named him the world's 3rd most trustworthy celebrity in 2012. Ron Howard and Morgan Freeman had the highest rankings. He outperformed Tom Hanks, Betty White, and Michael J. Fox. Additionally, he was ranked as the 2nd most trustworthy person in Canada by Reader's Digest, immediately after environmentalist David Suzuki. These were not arbitrary rankings. They were derived from an extensive study that examined 46 personality traits in over 7,000 celebrities. His agent claimed that once the Forbes list was released, her phone was ringing with offers, but Holmes rejected the most of them. He only promoted goods that he genuinely supported. There was actual labor behind all the numbers and recognition. On camera, Holmes has personally finished over 220 home renovations over the years. These were not easy tasks. For many, it meant starting again and tearing homes to the ground. In addition, during his TV career, he conducted 52 thorough home inspections, demonstrated how to solve significant issues step by step: hazardous mold, damaged plumbing, defective wiring, and foundation cracks. He wasn't merely accusing. He was working on the plumbing, wiring, demolition, and self-rebuilding in the midst of the chaos. One of the most reputable specialists on TV, having worked as a licensed contractor for over 35 years. His collection grew into a comprehensive visual manual for students, builders, inspectors, and homeowners. He transformed errors into teachings, and teachings into a legacy. With his first wife, Alexandra Lorax, Mike Holmes had 3 children. Despite their initial interest in construction, each of them eventually entered the field and followed somewhat distinct paths. The eldest, Amanda, made the early decision that she did not want to appear on camera. As an alternative, she managed corporate activities in the background, avoiding the limelight. Born in 1987, Sherry's dream was to see the world. That was all she wanted. She didn't want to build anything. However, at age 21, everything changed in 2008. Sherry was horrified when she went to New Orleans with her father to assist in building a hurricane-resistant house for a woman who had lost everything. The journey was filmed for television. On a male-dominated construction site, she was the sole woman. Nevertheless, something clicked. Everything changed after that trip. She developed a strong enthusiasm for the work, particularly for smart homes and accessible design. She received 2 designations as a Women Build Ambassador for Habitat for Humanity in 2017 and 2018. She also gained recognition for her proficiency with tiling and framing, eventually charging between $10,000 and $20,000 for speaking appearances alone. Born in 1989, Mike Jr. also had no desire to follow in his father's footsteps. Actions: desired to work as a firefighter. He took a summer construction work at the age of 14 in order to earn some cash. However, his love for his work grew as he put in more hours. He eventually became an expert in engineering and construction, obtained a license, and started managing large projects by himself. He also became a TV host and a woodworking hobbyist. His greatest obstacle? On camera, directing the construction of his father's futuristic high-tech dream garage. The family banded together to start a television show called Holmes Family Rescue in December 2021 as their abilities improved. It was well received. In its first season, over 25.5 million people watched. It was among the top 3 non-sports shows on cable. As Mike, Sherry, and Mike Jr. assisted homeowners in recovering from construction-related catastrophes, the show tracked their journey. The blend of humor, emotion, and expertise was adored by the audience. 12 episodes from the 2nd season were released in the spring of 2023. Following a 2-year hiatus, HGTV returned with 8 new episodes for Season 3, which premiered on June 4, 2025. With an average rating of 2.25 and roughly 774,000 viewers per episode, ratings were stable. The finest aspect? Fixes were no longer the sole focus of the broadcast. It demonstrated how the family grew closer via working together. Mike went so far as to say that we are now buddies, and that I am no longer the only one instructing them. There wasn't always that bond. Later on, Mike revealed something painful. He was absent from his child's early years. "You don't have a life in construction," he remarked. "I didn't spend much time with my children while they were little." The fact that his father, Jim H., had been his biggest inspiration made it hurt much more. Taught Mike all about construction from the age of 6. He referred to his father as Superman. However, everything fell apart when Mike was 30. During a recession, his firm failed. His marriage ended. His father passed away a month later. He went down the unguarded basement steps and fell. It was cruel. However, working with his children as adults allowed Mike to spend time with them, something he never imagined he would have. "I would hardly see them if I didn't have them working with me," he remarked. With the following generation, that connection only grew stronger. In 2018, Sherry married Blake Steen, a fellow contractor. Callie Kay was born in 2019 and Oakland Summer was born in 2021. Mike is now a happy grandfather. He adores the part. Homes on Homes is a new series. More of these behind-the-scenes family moments will be featured in Building a Legacy. Zapier and Mike's long-term partner have supported him. They have acknowledged that they are married, yet he still refers to her as his wife. After his divorce, she entered his life, supported him during his recovery, and encouraged him to pursue television. She avoids the spotlight, hasn't used social media, and hasn't been involved in the voyage for more than 20 years. TV was just one aspect of the family company. To encourage skilled trades, Mike founded the Holmes Foundation. They have awarded more than 155 scholarships and bursaries, totaling more than $240,000 during the last 20 years. They concentrate on students enrolled in trade schools, paying particular attention to women in the construction industry. 24 technical awards were given to Conestoga College alone. The cost of these bursaries is $2,000. It's not just about the money. The goal is to prevent financial pressure from causing students to drop out. Big events like Skills Ontario, when Mike's team attempted to break the Guinness World Record for the most people pounding nails at once, are also supported by the foundation. Mike, meantime, made his well-known brand a serious company. Every year, his line of work clothes and equipment endorsements generates millions of dollars. He doesn't give his name away easily. He created his brand on the same make-it-right principles, which are applied to every product. People know they can rely on Mike because he does, whether it's equipment, tools, or supplies. He has also donated to charities using his fame. Since 2005, he has served as an ambassador for SOS Children's Villages Canada, contributing to the organization's more than $19.5 million in fundraising. In order to observe the differences between sponsored and unsponsored children, he even journeyed to Central Africa. The journey transformed him, as well as Sherry. One of the most impactful experiences of her life, according to her, was when she began supporting a child personally. But there were some controversies along the way for Mike Holmes. The story started in 2015 when Terrace Wood was launched in Meaford, Ontario, a 25-home boutique development. There was a strong selling point for the project. Supported by renowned Canadian contractor Mike Holmes, it was marketed as Holmes-approved homes. Buyers were reassured by his name alone. He was the TV character who said he would put things right. However, the ensuing construction scandal would rank among the largest in Canadian history. 14 of the 25 houses were constructed with serious flaws. Roofs began to leak. The size of the beams supporting the second levels was incorrect. Water intrusion caused mold to grow. HVAC systems malfunctioned. Families were forced to abandon some homes for more than a year because they were so dangerous. Third Line Homes, the builder, made no corrections. Repairs have to be covered by Terrian, Ontario's home warranty company. It only got worse. 2 of the modern, roomy, and just 2-year-old residences were demolished in 2024. Demolished, not renovated, not fixed, crushed by heavy machinery. A third house is yet to be demolished. Locals looked on in fear. Seeing his neighbor's house demolished was distressing, according to Fiart Johnson. At one point, his own home was also deemed hazardous. He was warned by engineers that the second level might collapse on top of the first. The story's financial aspect was then revealed. Mike Holmes had done more than simply support the idea. Through Emshire Homes Holdings Limited, he provided the builder with 2 $390,000 private mortgages at 10%. The 25 parcels for Terrace Wood were purchased using the money. The promotional materials made no mention of any of this. Holmes appears as a standalone authority. He now appeared to have a direct financial stake in the build and the project's success. Third Line Homes has closed by 2019. The subsequent events felt like a betrayal. The first house in Terrace Wood had been purchased by Holmes, who used it for advertisements before selling it for $790,000. Later, the same house was named as one of the faulty ones in a lawsuit. The purchasers thought they were purchasing a property that was safe and approved by the community. Rather, they faced legal troubles and structural problems. In 2021, they filed a notice of legal action against Holmes, alleging that they had misrepresented themselves. The case, which totaled $8 million, named Holmes as comp owners and even the LOC. The accusation was that Holmes was touting Third Line Homes when they weren't. The homeowner inspected a single Terrace Wood house and believed it was included in the package. This wasn't to residences, though. Additionally, I fully recommend AGM Renovations as a business. His visage and voice may be heard in advertisements everywhere. TV, radio, and the internet. He advised against taking chances with any contractor. Believe AGM, he said. Behind the scenes, however, Ontario's Electrical Safety Authority was already looking into AGM. The truth was made public by CBC News in February 2025. AGM was undertaking risky electrical work, utilizing unlicensed electricians, and evading permits. Families were left with incomplete projects, exposed wiring, and holes in the walls. In Barrie, a family spent over $73,000 on an unfinished bathroom repair. For more than a year, the mess remained unattended. Had even joined up with the ESA to promote electrical safety, making appearances in movies discussing the importance of hiring qualified professionals and obtaining the necessary permissions. However, the business he supported was breaking all of those regulations. All mentions of AGM disappeared when the investigation was released. Holmes's group erased all of the video advertisements and the endorsement page. They did not explain. Silence fell on customers who had relied on Holmes's promise. On Holmes's sole recommendation, one guy, Peter McHale, spent $73,450 on a renovation. He contacted Holmes's company when things went wrong. Initially, they promised to assist. Then nothing. No resolution, no follow-up. To make matters worse, the ESA that had collaborated with Holmes to advocate for safety was now looking into the business that Holmes was endorsing. It was impossible to overlook the paradox. We did our best, one consumer at a time. They're not very compatible. Days after the CBC article was published, AGM went bankrupt. CEO Ivan Atanasov wrote a letter on February 15, 2025, accusing the media of damaging their brand. The business shut down right away. The Better Business Bureau had 46 complaints against them at the time. Families were left with hazardous electrical systems and partially completed kitchens. Some needed even more money to repair the damage after having already paid over $85,000. Behind the happy advertisements and assurances of those who believed Mike Holmes, they had faith in making things right. However, they received broken lives, broken homes, and broken promises. Once a symbol of confidence, the name is now at the epicenter of two of Canada's worst reconstruction mishaps. Additionally, the physical, financial, and emotional harm is still being felt today.